Lots of topics to discuss. Let's talk a little bit about um, you know, when the guys are out there and as from a coaching's perspective, and even as parents, how we look at the game. When does development need to be most of the focus versus, what's happening on the scoreboard? Um, I know just to give a little bit of my perspective from where, from the beginning of my playing days to, when I finished coaching as a professional, now coaching younger players. As a professional, I got to spend a lot of time around teammates and even coaches for that matter, who were from Latino countries, Dominican, Venezuela, Mexico, even some, Puerto Rico and, Asian countries. But especially in places like the Dominican and Venezuela, those guys, when you got to know them a little bit better and ask them about their history in the game and what their upbringing was like, uh, they grew up in a very different culture, a very different youth baseball atmosphere than we did as young players, and even kids that we see today. It's almost like night and day. And I'm not sure if you've seen that video. I've shared it a few times over the years where Mariano Rivera is sharing with somebody. I don't remember who he was interviewing with, but he was showing and demonstrating how he would turn a piece of cardboard into a glove.
I've seen
And
that.
that's what he would use as a glove. And I know that I saw that video for the first time a handful of years ago, and seeing that, and then just looking at what the stuff that we buy our kids and the stuff that these kids are using. And the kids thinking, I don't know if they necessarily think it. I think a lot of it is more of it's a popularity status thing. My buddy is swinging this bat. I want one of those too. Um, it's all a business. It's all fun. And, the parents, as parents, we all like to spoil our kids, but is that stuff necessary, for these kids to be, absolutely not. But, to go back to it, seeing those guys and how good they were as professionals and what their life was like growing up, um, it almost gives a little perspective on maybe what's more important, what the game is really about. Those guys, they're all great guys. The guys I played with, and they were enthusiastic, high spirit guys. And a lot of those guys would even send part of their paychecks back home to
Right.
their country, to help support their families. And again, some of these guys I played with became big leaguers, a couple of them even big league all-stars. And they didn't they didn't grow up, you know, playing in tournaments and going out there and, you know, feeling the need to, you know, win all the time. And everything they did was about having fun and playing the game. And I would venture that their youth even now was a lot like ours was as young ones, and there wasn't a lot of adults around. They were just out playing the game and having fun. What are your thoughts on all this, on
You
this
know, I,
topic?
I have a I have a thought about the South American players. A lot of it's cultural differences. And, in America, it is trying to, outside of sports, it's trying to climb the ladder. Success is a very relative term. But we have this idea in America of what success is, and you've got to make certain money and you've got to try to get somewhere. And I think in some of the other cultures, they are they're just a little bit more laid back. It's a little bit more about enjoying life. And I think our culture bleeds over into our youth sports. And what that eventually does to our children is we are introducing stress to them at a very, very young age, meaning that you've got to now get ready in, 8U, 10U, and I'm not saying, I mean, I work with some pretty young kids with hitting and pitching, but the thing is that parents are introducing this stress at a young age and trying to create these athletes that they think they're going to grow up and they're going to make millions of dollars and they're going to have fame and they're going to have fortune inside this game. And I'm not saying that might not be the case for some of them, but for the majority of people at a young age, in my mind, at a young age, this is about enjoying the game. And this is about enjoying that as long as you can. And then you get to an age where, as you are maturing, as your brain is developing, the game takes a little different shape for kids and athletes. And what I mean by that is it's still fun, but the game now starts teaching life applicable lessons that they can be learning when they're young too. But the game, as you get older, really kind of mirrors some of the things you deal with in life. Failure, trying to win and you don't. I was talking to a whole group of high school softball girls the other night and was hitting, and I had a game in college. I went 4 for 4 with 4 line drive outs. I did there was it was just a freak deal. I hit the ball in the nose 4 times, got out. And and there's times in life where you do everything right, but it doesn't seem like it turns out well for you. And then you put a bad swing on a ball and you get a hit. Things like that happen in baseball and softball. And so the development has to be around, in my mind, as a culture, has to be around what is this teaching my kid? The goal can't be I'm trying to get my kid a bunch of money or a bunch of fame. It's got to be, what does this game, how can it help develop my kid and mature my child and teach them things that they're going to take into their adult life? Because at the end of the day, I don't know what the percentage, you may know the percentage, but I don't know it offhand of what's the percentage of people who actually play, even get drafted and get to play in the minor leagues, much less in the actual big leagues. I mean, that's a very small percentage of people who actually play these games. And I think that as a whole, we've got to reevaluate why we're doing the things we're doing with our young athletes. And I think that money changes the dynamic of everything. I mean, you're seeing, they're talking about Ohtani getting over $500 million. It's mind-blowing type of money. And whether we realize it or not, in the parents, I think in coaches, they realize it, at least in the ones who are self-aware. But with parents, they're seeing that stuff, and that just trickles down. It kind of like with the bats and the gloves and things you were talking about. I mean, it's so money driven. It's so commercialized. The game is so commercialized in America that it trickles down. That stress along, anytime something comes commercialized, stress comes along with it, because you're introducing money and things like that comes along with the game. And so when you introduce that into young ages, I mean, you have parents who are buying, they're probably feeling the stress of going, my kid's playing 60 games. I'm traveling all summer. I bought him a $500 bat. I bought her a $300 glove. I've got all this money invested. You better do well. And not realizing that they are introducing that stress into players, and then not understanding why players are burning out, not understanding why kids are crying on the field, and why they are, how can I say it? George McDonald he's an old theologian guy, but he wrote a bunch of children's literature that had nothing to do with theology. He just wrote a bunch of children's literature. And I won't get this quote exactly right, but it's one of the most profound quotes I ever read. He said that there's nothing more sad in the world than a child who's been exposed to things they should not be exposed to at too young of an age, that has taken that childlikeness out of their face. And you go watch 8 and 10U kids play, and a lot of times you don't see them smiling. You don't see them having a good time. And that's because that's a projection of the adults in there. That's not, they are not process focused. They are performance focused. And we've got to be process focused in this thing, where and the adults have to submit themselves to the process before the kid can. The coaches
Mhm.
have to, realizing this is a process, and we are going to allow this failure, and we are going to be process driven, not performance driven with our athletes. And I think that's a mindset that should carry on through the whole thing. And especially when they're young, we're just allowing them to have fun, have good energy, and teaching them simple things and allowing them to fail. That's my take on that.
Yeah, you touched on it a bunch right there. The adult emotions, uh, they have taken over the game, period.
No doubt.
There are very few situations out there. They're out there, but there are very few situations out there where the adults, whether it's the adults in the dugout or the adults in the stands, have true perspective of what youth sports is. They, the emotions of what the scoreboard is, the emotions of, what Game Changer says, the emotions of
Yeah,
who's,
right. Right.
who's sitting the bench,
Yep.
the
That is right.
the emotions. I talked about this a few weeks back in a post about, why do adults, why does youth sports drive them so crazy? Why does a side of adults that is something that most of them would be ashamed of, or talk about somebody else if they acted that way? Why does youth sports bring that out in them? And there were a couple people that commented about the money that they spend on their kids and what they expect and are looking for in return because of that money they spend.
Right.
And
Right.
I was reading that, and man, that perspective, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, you
You're
are.
gonna, the way, I can only imagine what that car ride home is like. I can only imagine what those conversations, at dinner at the restaurant after that game that didn't go how mom or dad wanted it to go. I can only imagine how those are. And those are the type of situations that the burnout factor is going to happen sooner than later. And again, to me, everybody's different. I'll always say that, but it doesn't make sense to me. And again, my perspective, with as long as I got to play the game and coach it, and now get to teach it to the young ones and their families, you're asking for trouble. And you have to, as adults, we have to take the adult emotions outside of a youth sports game, or just
Right.
youth sports. And that is where a lot of the trouble stems from. And again, this whole conversation today is going to be around how do what is more important? I don't know if one is more important than the other, but as kids, the development process, the growth process should always be priority. I
Always.
I have a hard time hearing about kids, families, these kids go to tournaments and like they sit the bench the whole game, or the whole weekend. And I'm
That's
like,
right.
that's not what this is about. And when that happens, it's strictly adults. Adults are taking that away from these kids.
That's right.
And these kids, they play the game because they love it. They play it because, they enjoy being out there and playing with their friends. Eventually, that changes. You get on up into the high school ages, and it becomes a little bit more serious. But I think it's just the whole culture and atmosphere of what surrounds tournaments and how much money you pay to get into a tournament. We're obsessed with rankings. We're obsessed with, um, you know, I know the guys that started Perfect Game, but we're obsessed with with team, we're the top team in the state, we're, top team in our area. Like, this is what it is. Again,
Yeah,
this is youth sports. It's fun, and that stuff is cool. But the reality is that it's not what life is really all about, and will be long term. I mean, there's a again, I've said it before, there's a great chance that these kids literally will remember none of this.
they won't. That's
I I can think back to my youth games.
yeah,
I I remember maybe a couple home runs I hit. I remember getting drilled in the ribs one time. I don't remember
right.
any pitching performances. I don't remember any coaches' faces. I don't remember honestly, any of my teammates' faces, probably because I had so many teammates after, but like it's their brains are so far from being developed, they're not going to remember anything. But
No,
again, it's the lessons and the skills that they're going to learn from learning how to develop, learning how to grow as athletes, which is going to carry them into life. I guarantee you it's not going to be the scoreboard. That scoreboard means jack, except to make everybody feel good, and
that
we can say the scoreboard is a product of
the
all that
process.
growth, and that's what it is. It is if we develop our team as a whole, the scoreboard will get better. It
Yes,
will.
it will.
Um,
It will.
and if there's 11, 12 kids on our roster, we want to see growth from 11 or 12 kids by the end of the season.
That's right.
And,
Right.
that, yeah, it's hard to watch. I mean, again, the pro game taught me a lot about development that I had no idea I was learning at the time. When I was with the Angels, every position player on a roster, one of the developmental goals was that each player had at least 200 at bats by the end of the season,
Oh,
right?
that's awesome. That's awesome.
No matter how those at bats went, the coaches, the managers had, strict instructions that every player is to get, a certain number of at bats by the end of the season.
That's awesome.
And I mean, that's development. That's
And
how you grow.
you that leads me to something that I was sitting here thinking about. Every parent and every coach and really every player should have what is a win in their mind. There's the guy who does on Facebook, I forget what his name is, but he has the quality at bat. That's the name of his program, and that's what he preaches is
Bringer.
just go have a quality at bat. I mean, that is in a sense. Let's break this down to a very micro level. Over the course of let's say 20 at bats, if you have, or say 30 at bats, make it easy, and you get 10 hits out of 30, you're hitting 300 in pro ball. That's great, right? But if let's say I have 7 hits in that, and now my batting average is 250 or whatever that would be. But out of that 30 at bats, I felt like I had 20 quality at bats or 25 quality at bats or whatever that ratio you want it to be. Then I can feel good about myself because I have made the process something scalable and something achievable instead of going, I'm going to hit 300. And the guys who hit 300 are guys who break this down into a simple thing of going, I'm going to go have a quality at bat, this AB. But we get so outcome driven and so performance driven. We get so the scoreboard, that's all. That's all people look at in our, there's a collective mind around winning that's all that matters, but there's a process that helps people win consistently. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do with our athletes is get them to be consistent. As you know, they always say that the difference between AA and the major leagues is just the consistency. It's not the athletic ability. It's just the consistency of being able to do it day in and day out and be consistent with the delivery, consistent with your swing, whatever that may be. And so I think we have to scale this whole thing down as players, as coaches, as parents, and going, okay, what is a win? What is a true, like, achievable win for
Mm-hmm.
my kid? And it may be as simple as my kid catching the ball. If they are young, a win is they caught it. and it can be as simple as that. Or they I alligatored the ball when he or she fielded it. I mean, it's got to be whether they caught it or not. Did you get your hands in the right place? The outcome's irrelevant. I just want to get your hands in the right place, because if we can do that, you will get consistent at that. And I think that is what true people. Let me back up and say this. You were talking about parents in the stands creating stress. I guarantee you that if you could poll those parents, 95% of them never played the game. And the reason they are like that is because they don't understand how hard this game is to play and to be good at it. And to be good at it consistently takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort. And most of the parents who are bringing the stress did not play, or they never played at a level where it was where they were being challenged. And so they go into that putting stress upon their kid, not realizing. We was at my daughter's game yesterday, and we were playing, and this girl hits a ground ball. My daughter's pitching. This girl hits a ground ball to, I'm sorry, my daughter was hitting. Girl hits a ground ball to first base. The girl boots it, and the dad yells, "Catch the ball!" from the stands. Well, I promise you, she wasn't not trying to catch it. She wasn't thinking, I think I'll make this error and let this kid on base. I promise she was trying to catch the ball. But see, that's adult emotions, because what that does, that makes, in a sense, his daughter's making him look bad. And that's those insecurities and things that filter in, and then all of a sudden that comes out. And I've always said, it's like, as they say, what pressure pushes out of us what's in us, meaning that when you get put under pressure, what's really kind of underneath the surface comes out. And there's just a lot of insecurity that's being projected onto our kids at these games and at these practices. And I think that's really what you're seeing with, even like we were talking about earlier, about buying all the nice things and having all, it becomes an insecurity that's being projected onto our players and our kids, not realizing. And I think the people who lived this game, like you played till you were in your 30s, right? Or how old was you when you retired?
30s, early 30s.
I was 22. I mean, end up playing this game. I played it for almost 20 years. You played it for almost 30 years. When you play it that long, you come to realize that this thing is a grind. If it's a grind. I commend you so much. I was telling Amber the other night that I was like, Chris Gissel loved baseball more than I did. And he had to, because to do what you did, that's a grind. And people don't even understand the grind that playing this game, the mental aspect of it. Now, I've read so many of your posts about the things of having to overcome certain obstacles and come back and be able to grow and be able to have the humility to be able to grow. And that's the other thing. I think the parents and coaches, that's what we have to submit ourselves to the process, meaning that we have to be humble enough. If we want our players and kids to be humble, we have to be humble in a sense ourselves. So the process, it's hard to watch our kids fail. It's hard to watch our kids sit the bench. It's hard to watch our kid. I watched Camden yesterday. She was probably 5-6 miles an hour slower than she typically is in the circle. She's 14, got hit around a little bit, but it was good for her, because in that, when you don't have your good stuff, that's when you really learn how to pitch. And I tell her this all the time. I was like it's you find out how good you are when you don't have your good stuff. When your fastball don't have that life and the ball's not moving, can you still get outs? And it's hard to watch that, but at the same time, I know that's good for her because I've lived that. And I just think there's a lot of parents who are like that. They just don't realize how hard this game is. They just don't. And they don't realize that at the end of the day, this is about, and it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, let's say you play till you're 40 years old. That would be a crazy long career. but eventually they're going to look at you and say, you're not good enough to be here no more. Everybody gets told that, whether that's at the high school level, college level, or the pro level. Eventually they're like, listen, and it may be just an age thing that catches them, but eventually players get to a point where like, listen, there's somebody younger, there's somebody better that's going to take your spot. And so people retire, whatever, and they live a life outside of this game. And I have
Mm-hmm.
talked to so many pro players over the years who struggle outside of the game because they don't realize how to function in life, because their life has been so confined to competing performance. And if we want to raise healthy kids and healthy adults, it can't be outcome performance driven. It's got to be process driven.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes if the adult emotions that we're talking about would be different if it went back to how it was when you and I were growing up, where you played an actual season with, a long-term record. We're talking a 2 to 3 month season, and at the end of the season, you are, you know, 20 wins and 20 losses. Whereas we go into, it's literally like every single weekend is the World Series, for these kids and the parents. And with that, it comes intensity, and
It ramps everything up. It does.
yeah, and you referred to it a lot, that money is behind a lot of this. And
It is.
the kids don't have that awareness yet about the money side of it.
They do not.
But we know the adults do, and they know how much they paid for the hotel. They know how much they paid to drive there. They know how much they paid to play in that tournament, what their uniform fees are. They know how much they're paying on concessions, right? Whatever it is. And again, the adults chose that. They chose to put their kids in that. And then some of them carry that over their kid's head. They put that, we're paying this much. You better go out there and earn our money. You better pay us back by going out there and doing good. And if you don't, you refer to it as, it's the adults see it as a reflection on them. And it's right. Yeah. What would it be any different if we went back to a league season sort of competition? I would love to, I think I referred to it in our last podcast. I would love to see community ball come back, and whether there's different levels of that, it is what it is. But I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to drive 5 hours to play teams that you live in the same town as. But that's what everybody's doing. Yeah. I coming from the game that we grew up in, and then professional baseball for as long as I did, and then I stepped into it and I started learning all this stuff. I'm like, the landscape has definitely changed since the last time I was in youth ball. Like that stuff didn't happen way back. You played, it was in your community. That's who you played. Would things change at all if we went back to that scene? Or will that never happen again? Because so many of the adults thrive off of that. Let's go play a World Series this weekend. The whole World Series thing kills me anyways, when kids talk about they're going to play in the World Series, and
there's 4,700
there's even families.
They're all over the nation. I'm like, which one did you win?
I hear World Series and I'm like, that's even the Major League World Series. Like, I love the what's it called? They had it this year. All the nations came and played the World Baseball Classic. I love that. That's awesome. Like, to me, that's the true World Series.
It is.
But anyways, it's that. I would be real curious to see if that would help anything. Because again, the adult emotions, they're just over the top, and the perspective is lost a lot because of, I wonder if it's just the culture of it, just how much money it's costing families now. The travel is just absurd. Like, there are families that I hear it when I work with families, like, they are ready for the season to be over
Oh yeah.
because their weekends are gone. Their
Yep.
weekends are gone and they've been gone for 2 or 3 months straight.
Oh yeah.
You know, what would happen if it was maybe a doubleheader on a weekend day
And you
with a local team and
play
then
Tuesday night or something,
yeah, yeah,
at local park.
and a game during the week and a
Right.
game during the week and then one or two other days of a good quality 2.5 hour practice, and
I
that's
know,
what we grew up on.
I
And again,
know,
not saying that go
I know
ahead.
I know process wise that would be better. I know that it would because I've seen this and we kind of hit on it before. I don't think at a certain point in time, let's say you go out and you work with a hitter, and let's say at 100 swings, at 150 swings or whatever, I'm talking about off the tee, soft toss, hitting, whatever, the swing starts breaking down, and you're like, okay, listen, we need to stop today, come back tomorrow, whenever, because you're fatigued, and you need, just like pitching mechanics break down at a certain point on a pitcher. And so I see that in these weekend deals where development actually they're getting reps, but I don't know. There comes a point where they're no longer quality reps because they're playing like 8 and 10 games in 2 days. And really, how many at certain point of time, the quality of the game and what you're doing, especially on young arms that are having to pitch these games, it becomes very detrimental to them. So I think we're almost being counterproductive. And then you're going
Mm.
from playing this weekend, having 5 or 6 days off, playing the next weekend, doing it all over again, all under the same stress, just blow, and then nothing. And I know that, and you would know this too, is anything that's going to be repetitive, the more often less is more, in the sense of, if I'm throwing Monday and then I can throw again Thursday, and then I can throw again maybe Sunday, and then throw again Thursday, and then throw again, where I am throwing consistently, but not
Mhm.
just throwing a whole bunch at once and then not doing it again, and then having to save myself and rest up and doing it all a bunch again. You're not going to get the same quality of development as if you're playing consistently, like you said, like one night a week, doubleheader on the weekend, maybe 2 nights a week, doubleheader, where that's why you're going to see more you're going to see more development happen in a junior high school or high school, because they're not doing that just turn and burn thing on the weekend and then you're off, and then the next weekend it's turn and burn again. And it's just not conducive to development at all. It's actually conducive to, I've got to keep pushing, and then I'm still pushing under poor mechanics, and it don't necessarily hurt you with your swing, but you end up could hurt yourself on when you're throwing the ball, whether you're pitching baseball or you're pitching softball. And because the mechanics break down, because you're just in an environment. I mean, my daughter played some days where they played 4 games, 5 games in one day. And
Wow.
that don't happen necessarily in the baseball world per se. Softball's a little bit more driven that way, but it becomes I just watched it this past summer, and I was like, we're not getting better on Sunday afternoon on our 8th game of the weekend. We look like we're getting
Mhm.
we need to go home, is what we need to do. We're getting worse. The swings are worse, the pitching's worse, our fielding's where they're gassed. I mean, and you look at that and you're like, why are you doing that? You're not, and that goes back to what's a win. And a win is different at different levels. My daughter's moving into high school, has a chance to go to college. We're going to do some things that's going to be different than a girl who's in 6th grade. My win for Camden is different than my win for Barrett, who's going to be playing T-ball next year, as
Mhm.
far as what we're looking to try to do. And people just have to try to back up and look at this and go, I want my kid to develop, and really try to find coaches. And this is where I think it gets very difficult, because let me ask you this, where do you think, um, why do you think people get caught up in performance, or I've got to win? Where does that come from? Why is the travel ball why is it, and I've got an idea, and I just want to kind of go down this path for a second. Why has it taken the shape that it has? Have you ever thought about that much? Where's that coming from? I know it's money, but what is shaping that?
I think tournament baseball came onto the scene heavy around the year 2000. So
Right.
we're almost 25 years into that transition, from when you and I were growing up. I don't know if I specifically know why that transition happened. I think maybe a lot of it has to do with it's easier, to play a handful of games in a weekend versus trying to schedule things over the week. Um, the thrills, the emotions, the excitement,
Yeah.
that comes with. I think that we see that as, the prize. The parents seeing their kids happy, they get these $5 rings or the t-shirt or the little ribbon, whatever it is. That's the prize for it. I hear a lot about, and you see a lot, you know, stop giving away participation trophies. And but now you turn around and we're playing every weekend so that we can go and hopefully get a trophy. When you and I were growing up, we got, if you want to call them participation trophies, we got that for a 2 to 3 month season. Now you
Right.
hear kids are
Right.
getting kids are getting trophies for every weekend they played the game. Um, you know, it, are we prize driven? Is it all about,
Yeah.
that ring or that t-shirt or yeah, I don't know. I have no, I try to think sometimes my boys are older now. They played when they were younger, but they haven't played for a long time. But how would I handle myself if my kids were young in this generation of playing? And I don't know that they played Little League. My oldest, he played a year of Babe Ruth before he had some health issues that took him away. I It doesn't interest me, but again, I think that what the game gave me and the experiences it gave me is probably a part of that. I know that it's not necessary to play 60, 70 games over a season to get better.
Right.
Um, I know that if a player goes down with an injury and has to miss a whole season, it's not going to stun his growth, and that
Right.
and that FOMO, the FOMO of all that is huge. And it's going to come back, and it has for a long time, and it's always going to come back to the adult emotions, and maybe it is that price thing. Maybe it's all about needing that reward of, for how much money it costs now. Maybe that ring or being able to say this or that, or post something on social media.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's what I think it
that
drives
is
it.
the yeah, the whole status thing. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what's behind a lot of it. And
Yeah.
again, maybe there's another factor that wasn't there when you and I were growing up. There was no social media, there were
Yeah.
no tournaments. Um, and
Has it?
that's the evolution of life. Everything
That's right.
everything progresses and changes. And you're going to hear our generation talk a lot about, man, we miss the good old days, and the younger generation isn't going to know the good old days. Right now, what they're going through is their good old days.
It is.
You know,
That's
what
right.
is you what yeah, what is youth sports going to be like when our kids are raising their own kids?
It'll
Who,
probably pendulum swing the other way. Probably.
hey,
So
I would I just said it. I would love to see it go back to more league local stuff, and now there's this kind of reputation that league ball isn't the same quality, which to be honest, it's not. Um, but the adults are making it that way.
right.
The adults are there's a high level of impatience for what you're seeing on the field. I've written about it before that the adults really struggle to just sit there and watch what they consider to be, low quality or poor quality
Yeah.
youth games. And because of that, they start seeking out situations where, you know, they want to, it's more enjoyable to watch. It's like a lot of, that's, we're in this whole tryout thing, for young athletes. It was never like that before, but now there's tryouts, and you're trying to put together the teams with the best talent, because the best talent means better baseball or softball. And then you go out there, and better talent means more wins, means more trophies
More
and
pats on the
rings
back.
and all the good stuff. Yeah, yeah. Again, it is what it is. It's the evolution of the game, but it's always going to come down to, performing. And as a coach, you know, I'm on the other side of it. I'm on more the instruction side now, and like I don't care how talented you are. If you guys are looking for help and you're looking for me to help, then bring it. I'll do my best to help. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to click, coaches and players. That's any coach who thinks that they're going to click with every athlete is completely ignorant. That's just
Right.
not
That's
possible.
right.
Right. But it's, as a coach, that should be my goal, is to, bottom line, let's help you get better. That's it. At the end of the year, if we played 40 games and we lost half of them and won half of them, or even if we lost more than we won, like, it's not a reflection on me. Like, I'm like, literally, I'm here to help the kids get better, each and every one of them. And again, my perspective may be different from others, but I really don't care, and
Yeah.
it's not going to change my life, you know, uh, whether we won more than we lost, or vice versa. It's not gonna change my life. I
Yeah.
still have a family to come home to. And I think I just, carrying around those emotions is not healthy, you
Yeah.
know, whether
Yeah.
we're so high when things are going good, and we're so low when things are going bad. Like, I had to learn as an athlete, for me to perform consistently, I couldn't be a roller coaster of emotions. It
That's
just,
right.
that consistency, it doesn't work with that. And
That's
that's,
right.
you look at youth sports, and that's what it is, man. Most, again, adults, they will ride the waves of the scoreboard. It's, you know,
That I
what are
you
your thoughts on that question? I know that I went off topic.
No, no, that was good, man, because you hit on something that I think so. Collective consciousness, meaning that just the collective mind of certain areas have different collective consciousness, just how they believe, how they act, what they think about life, how they perceive life. But due to social media and due to access to information that kids have, that parents have, that we constantly see, all we see, whether we're very unconscious of, we're always seeing somebody's best day on social media. Like, that's what you see. So I talk with my kids about this. I'm like, you scroll through your social media and you see Sally, she's in Las Vegas, and you see Susie, and she's at Disneyland, and you see this person, and they're here, and they're all during the summer, and you think, oh my gosh, all my friends do is travel. No, that's the only
Mhm.
time they left their house this summer, was to go on that vacation. But in your mind, that's communicating to you that they just travel all over the world, and they just go out, and that's what I should be doing all the time. And you're not
Mhm.
making the correlation that, no, they've been sitting at the house the last 3 weeks, just like you have, and been doing the same, having the same boring life, having to clean their room, having to, but that also affects adults who are unconscious of that. And so we have access to all of this stuff that's saying bigger is better, bigger, more, 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 more. It's got to be, you got to push, you got to have that straight, you've got to go the World Series, you got to go win, win, win. And that collective mind is now shaping every little facet of our societies, whether that's whatever that is. But you get into youth sports, then that collective mind takes over that bubble or that sphere, and then it starts taking shape that way, where now it's super
Mhm.
high anxiety. I mean, our whole world it's so fast paced. That's the other thing, is our world is fast paced. It's more fast paced than when you and I were kids. I mean, I was thinking about this just this morning of, I mean, you go back 100 years ago and or 150 years ago, you communicated with people. It was weeks when you sent a letter.
Mm.
Like if they wasn't where you could just go talk to them, it was weeks sending them a letter to find out what
Mm.
was going on. And now it's literally touch of your fingertips. So everything is speeding up, and with that, there's more stress involved as a society, and then that just gets transferred over, and we think that our and we're not doing a good enough job protecting our children from that. We are
Yeah.
introducing that to them young, and then wondering why they're having issue. Well, they're not supposed to be dealing with that. They're not supposed to be trying to handle that. And so it's a collective mind, and it is, but it's the world we live in. And it is, and I really feel like that eventually the people who went through that, my kids and the pendulum will almost swing back the other way. It does in a lot of these things eventually. Once some things are established, they'll never go away, but people will start going, I lived through that. I'm not going to put my kids through that. And I just feel like that is, I feel like as a society, I think people are starting to back up on a lot of different topics and go, why are we doing what we're doing? Why,
Mm.
you was talking about, you was talking about baseball about 2000. Well, that's when the internet got really going. It's when these things could
Mhm.
really get fired up. And over the last 20 to 25 years, it's just snowballed. And sometimes it snowballs so big that it creates a monster that nobody really wanted and didn't realize it was going to do that. But when you get this kind of, for lack of a better word, energy that's working behind this thing of it being anytime we get into performance driven, it will always introduce stress. Always. Your performance, if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. Well, then that is, I've got to perform. And I'm not saying there's not areas in life where we have to perform. We got to show up and perform. I get that. But when it comes to athletics, that is not life. That's athletics should be teaching us about life. It is not life. Then that should be tools of teaching me how to be able to perform in the areas of life that do matter, like showing up for my kids, being a good husband, being a good wife, those types of things, being a good coworker, how to work on a team, how to be able to be coachable,
Mhm.
how to be teachable, you know, and uh and so it has taken shape. It has taken a shape that people are going. I think we're in a stage of it right now where people's going, yeah, I know it's messed up, because there's a lot of people who understand. There's a lot of people who's kind of talking about this, and parents who understand it, but like, we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to.
Yeah.
We don't know what to
Nowhere
do.
else to go.
We've created something that train is rolling, and eventually it'll derail. But the more people talk about it, but it'll probably always be around. But it will boil down to people taking a step back, going, okay, let's reevaluate this whole system. Let's reevaluate what we're doing, and let's put some perspective on it, and let's bring this back down to winnable, achievable things that I can do with my kids. We went to a tournament last year, my daughter, and there was multiple teams there, like ages, is what I meant. And it was coach pitch that was playing on the field right behind my daughter. And the team, all the little kids had walk-up songs. They had matching unis, matching bat bags. I don't know what they spent, which astronomical amount of money. And everybody's like thinks it's so cute. Two parents got in a fight
Mm.
behind the dugout. My daughter's in left field, and I'm looking at her. She's in left field looking back behind her during the game, like, what's going on? And I didn't catch all of it. When she got, I was like, why in the middle of the game are you looking behind you? He goes, well, there's two adults fighting behind the fence. They were throwing down at a coach pitch game.
Mm.
But the whole deal, it's like you're teaching these you're teaching these little kids to think they're 30 years old. It's just wild, man. And it's just the energy around it. And I think the energy at first is like, oh my gosh, we love this because, we're competing for something. But then after you get a little taste of it, you're like, man, this is not healthy. And so I don't know exactly what the answer is to this. I just know I think it's going to run its course, and it will run its course with people. And I just hope that people realize, even if they're listening here, that if they will get process driven with their children and quit worrying about winning, it will all turn out like it's supposed to. If they're good enough
Yeah.
to go play professional ball, if you'll be process driven, they'll get there. They will. And and that's the other aspect of this, and you know it as well as I do. There's so many intangible things that come into play when it trying to get to the big leagues other than your athletic ability. There's so many aspects that come into play that there's been thousands of people who's had the athletic ability to play professional baseball that never got there. The mental aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it, being able to stay stoic, all those things. There's a lot of things that come into play. And so just because your kid has the athletic ability does not mean they're going to go play in the big leagues one day. And there's a lot of factors. And if we'll just stay process driven, it'll turn out like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a poster that we've made and I've talked about a lot on out there too. Peak athleticism. I don't know what the range is. Peak athleticism is some hit a little earlier than others. I didn't reach my peak athleticism until I was probably in my late 20s. Even
Right.
though I was able to get drafted before that, just continually getting better. Some athletes, hit it when they're teenagers. Everyone's different.
Yep.
I think that understanding that peak athleticism in our children's lives is such a temporary thing. Like we're only going to hit that once, right? And it's a process to get there. Everybody's different, but then like you said, it ends. And there's a great chance that all of these young athletes are going to spend more time in their life not being a peak performer as an athlete. They're going to spend way more time
That's right.
of their life being an employee or a business owner, obviously a spouse, a parent, and everything that we do, you're using the word process driven, everything that we do as parents and even as coaches, we have the honor to be an extension of the parents, is to prepare them for that type of stuff. And that a lot of those life skills come from learning how to be, to reach your peak. Everything that comes with that. But this is all temporary. It's
Yep.
what you see on the field is a temporary phase in these kids' lives. And like bottom line, let's help them enjoy it and want to do it for as long as their athleticism allows them.
Yeah.
And again, too often the adult emotions can drain that want and desire out of the kids to want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where we get in trouble. And it just perspective needs to be there early on. And I think that, you're asking like how does that stuff change? And I think the more and more people are out there talking about these sort of things, people with genuine experience, I think that you're right that most of these parents never played. I would love to see parent games. I would love to
Be
see
great. It would
I
be
would love
great.
to see I would love to see parent practices.
Yeah.
I think that all of a sudden overnight you would see the parents kind of shut their lips a little bit.
Yeah.
If they were to go out there and try to do everything that their kids are doing, I think that it would be amazing how humbled they would get so quickly,
Yeah.
right? And I think the perspective is lost and the perspective is needed. It's what's missing a lot, and we need more coaches that understand that too and don't get caught up in the scoreboard.
Yep.
Again, we're always out there wanting to win, but in the
Oh
end,
yeah.
it's not the end all. It's not. And it's hard to genuinely understand that if you didn't get to do it yourself, to
Yep.
be honest. And that's not, not to be mean or be a jerk or anything, but um and I've been doing this long enough and had families reach out to me that I will never meet in person, but through social media. And because we've been out there talking about this stuff, there are a lot of people that are so grateful that they did listen and understand a little bit more about either what they were going through or what they were heading into, and able to make decisions accordingly. So
Yep.
we're getting there. I mean, obviously there's no
Yeah,
way you'll
we
be able
are.
to reach everybody. But like you said, more people are starting to become aware of it and they talk about it. Unfortunately, a lot don't know where to go because it feels like it's the only option
Yep.
because of what league ball, city league, little league, whatever you want to call it, has become. And I would love to see things turn back around.
Yeah, I would too. I before we quit today, I would say this. The best step for process is for parents to get back out in their yard, hitting ground balls and playing catch with
Hmm.
their kids. That is the
Absolutely.
separator right now. I feel like in youth sports, I feel like what we see right now in youth sports is we have this huge disparity between your really good ones and then kids who are struggling to even play catch and catch fly balls and field ground balls. And when I was, especially in high school, I remember Southeast Oklahoma is known for really good baseball. And I could go around town to town to town, and everybody had an arm that was 85 plus, every one of them. And every the teams were competitive. Everybody you went could compete. Everybody had somebody they had usually had two good arms. They always had one good arm that they could run up there. You were going to see 85 plus miles an hour in high school. That's good. But now what you see around here is you'll have a team who has a kid who throws 90 and he is just light years above everybody else. And then you have these kids who throw 75. And I what that's coming from is why there's a disparity is these kids who look just so much better than everybody else. I promise you, if you go back, their parents did stuff with them when they were little, and the other kids, their parents did not do anything with them. They didn't
Yeah.
play catch with them. They didn't do these things. And so it's creating this huge disparity between athletes that really shouldn't be there because back in the day, everybody went out and did these things because we all
Hmm.
played together. You went to the park and you played on your rec team. You played summer ball together. Everybody knew how to play catch. I mean, and and so the process starts with parents getting engaged with their kids in their front yard. I don't care if you know anything about it or not, just let them throw the ball to you. You can
Hmm.
roll them ground balls. You don't have to know anything just to get out there when they're little, play catch with them. Because at the end of the day, and I preach this to my daughter all the time, is baseball and softball. Obviously, you got to have some athletic ability, but they are skill driven sports, meaning that that's the reason they're some of the greatest sports is because all sizes can play it because you can learn how to get good at a skill. Look at Jamie Moyer. He was good at hitting spots and mixing pitches, but he didn't throw hard. He didn't throw to 95 miles an hour, but he learned a skill and he was good at executing that skill. Jocelyn Allo at OU, she hit all those home runs as a DP, basically softball's DH, because she learned how to hit home runs. She learned how
Hmm.
to hit. She learned a skill. She didn't play on the field, but she got good at a skill. And and that is what's so great about these sports. If you will just develop yourself to the process and learn the skill, man, you can find a place to be. You can find a place to play. And that's what's so good about it. You can take somebody who's not very athletic, but they can learn how to do a skill and find a place on the field. And that's what I love about it. And that's why we have to get parents have got to just get out there and just start throwing the ball and let them. A lot of times it's just figuring it out. Just let that player throw it until they figure it out. And that's I think we're missing that.
Yeah, I've heard that referred to as backyard development.
That's a good way to put it.
That's how we grew up.